amazed at the level of chuntering from Labour MPs. He promised them probity. What he's given them is cronyism and an old boys club where Matthew Doyle is being proposed as an ambassador. Everyone knows the price of misleading the House. Will the Prime Minister finally take responsibility and go?
The reason why his time in office will soon be coming to a close is because he promised change but has delivered chaos.
Keir Starmer faced outright humiliation in PMQs as what should have been routine questioning spiraled into chaos. In a brutal clash led by Kemi Badenoch, Starmer was hammered over welfare failures, economic pressure, defense risks, and even the survival of his own chancellor. While dodging key questions that only made the pressure worse, it became a deeply damaging moment for Starmer, exposing cracks in his leadership at the worst possible time.
We have gone backwards on defense under him because we are borrowing to pay for welfare. Yesterday, we learned that the cost of government borrowing is now the highest in 2 decades.
Keir Starmer walked into that chamber thinking he had survived the worst. Just 24 hours earlier, his own MPs had lined up to block a parliamentary inquiry that could have buried him. He needed them to save him, and they did. He thought that was over. He was wrong. Because Kemi Badenoch had been watching every second of it.
Mr. Speaker, I've got my dry suit on today, and let me tell the Prime Minister that when Boris Johnson was faced with that motion...
She didn't open with policy. She didn't open with numbers. She opened with something far more dangerous. She pointed at his own MPs and told the chamber that the man standing at that dispatch box had just spent the previous day begging his own people to protect him. Think about that. A sitting prime minister, forced to rely on party loyalty just to survive a vote. Not to win a policy, not to pass legislation, just to survive. Badenoch framed it perfectly, and Starmer had nowhere to run.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister doesn't want to say how many more people, in fact, are out of work and claiming universal credit since he took office. Perhaps he doesn't know. So let me tell him. The number is 1.5 million people.
She set a trap. 1.5 million more people on welfare under Starmer. Confirm or deny? Simple. He didn't. Instead, he deflected to minimum wage, the NHS, and policing, listing achievements like a brochure. He never answered. In PMQs, that silence is the answer.
Yesterday, one Labour MP actually said that his days are numbered. That's one of them. I wonder who it was, because they're all looking guilty as hell.
This is how political damage actually works. It is rarely about the facts. It is about the image burned into people's minds. Badenoch asked a direct question. Starmer deflected. And the picture that creates is a prime minister who cannot defend his own record with a straight answer. That image travels far beyond Westminster.
Why we're spending more on welfare than we're earning in tax? It's because of him and his terrible policies. This is all under him. We are spending so much on welfare, we cannot afford to defend the country.
Badenoch escalated, from the number to what it means. She argued the only thing growing is the welfare bill, funded by taxed workers. Now it wasn't economics, but fairness. She framed Starmer as backing dependency, while workers carry the burden, and that hits emotionally.
The Chancellor was very proud to say inflation was down to 3% and falling. 6 interest rates in a cut. We've seen the growth figures for the early part of this year. And she says, well, the cost of borrowing's gone up. Yes, because there's a conflict in Iran. And what did she want to do? What did she want to do? When I said we wouldn't be dragged into that war because I thought through the consequences, including the economic consequences, what did she do?
Starmer tried to fire back. His response was to point at the past. He said this was their system. He said the Conservatives built this problem. And in a long debate, that argument might land. But PMQs is not a long debate. PMQs is a sprint, and when you spend your sprint looking backwards, you look like you are running away from what is happening right now. Badenoch looked like a prosecutor moving forward. Starmer looked like a witness trying to explain himself.
We cannot afford to defend the country. And if he won't listen to me, Mr. Speaker, perhaps he'll listen to the former Labour Defence Secretary, Lord Robertson, who is saying, and I quote, "We cannot defend Britain with an ever-expanding welfare budget."
She raised the stakes by linking welfare to defense, citing a credible warning that rising welfare costs threaten Britain's military capability. Now it wasn't just economics, it was national security. The implication, his policies risk the country itself. The room shifted.
This is the Labour government that increased defence spending, the highest sustained spend since the Cold War. What did they do, Mr. Speaker? When they came into power, defence spending was 2.5%, and when they left power, it was 2.3%. And even their own Secretary of State admitted they hollowed out our armed forces, so we'll take no lectures from them on defence.
Starmer responded with figures. He claimed Britain is now spending more on defense than at any point since the Cold War. He said the Conservatives hollowed out the armed forces. These are facts. They may even be accurate. But here is the brutal reality of political communication. When one person speaks in fear and urgency, and the other speaks in spreadsheets, the one with the spreadsheet loses the room. He sounded like a technician. She sounded like someone who actually cared.
Instead of getting a grip on the economy, the Chancellor is briefing out rent controls to curry favour with left-wing backbenchers. This is not a serious way to run the economy. It is time the Prime Minister gives her an easier job.
Then came the key moment. Badenoch asked if he'd reshuffle Chancellor Rachel Reeves. He didn't answer, just spoke in generalities. She replied, "Sounds like she's toast." In politics, silence is telling. By not backing her, he weakened her, sparked doubt in the party, and fueled the story.
The British public from the consequences, and nothing is going to distract me from what matters to the British public.
Mr. Speaker, I think the whole country is sick of this man's tone-deaf, pompous moralising.
This is when Badenoch went fully personal. She called him tone-deaf. She called him pompous. She stood there and listed the exits from his inner circle, the scandals, the internal rebellions, the cracks spreading through his own government. This was not a policy disagreement anymore. This was character destruction in real time. She was not arguing that his policies were wrong. She was arguing that he was finished. That is a different kind of attack entirely, and it is the most dangerous kind because it does not require evidence. It only requires enough people to start nodding.
Mr. Speaker, depending upon results in the elections next week, this may well be my final PMQs. I suppose, Mr. Speaker, the same is perhaps true for the Prime Minister as well.
Now here is the layer most coverage missed entirely. To understand why this exchange was so uniquely savage, you have to understand the Mandelson situation sitting directly underneath it. Peter Mandelson, one of the most controversial figures in British political history, has been circling this government. Starmer had just avoided a formal investigation into that connection. His MPs formed a human shield around him. That is the wound Badenoch was pressing every single time she said the phrase, saving his own skin. Without knowing that context, her attack sounded loud but slightly vague. With that context, every line she delivered was a scalpel going into the exact same cut.
Mr. Speaker, experts are warning that food prices will rise by 10% this year as farmers' costs soar. Trump's war has exposed how weak Britain's food security is. Yet under the system brought in by the Conservatives,
Starmer tried to reframe everything. He called the opposition irresponsible. He positioned himself as a statesman dealing with real crises, Middle East tensions, Cobra meetings, global instability. He was trying to make Badenoch look small and opportunistic while he stood above the noise. It is a smart move in theory. A leader who refuses to be dragged down into the mud while the world burns around him looks serious and disciplined. But it only works if the audience already trusts him. If they are already questioning him, it looks like he is hiding behind the news cycle.
Please could the Prime Minister explain to the House, if he's done nothing wrong and process has been followed, why did he need to force his MPs to vote against an investigation? Is it because he's worried they don't believe his version of the truth?
Two completely different stories were being told in that chamber simultaneously. Badenoch was telling the country that this is a weak prime minister who has lost control of his party, his economy, and his own narrative. Starmer was telling the country that he is a responsible leader, fixing a broken inheritance while his opponents play games for the cameras. PMQs never decides who is telling the truth. It decides which story people walk away with. And on this day, the story that left with most people was his story.
The Prime Minister was reduced to whipping his MPs to save him and pleading with a tax dodger to rejoin his cabinet. How much longer do we all have to put up with his shambles?
Keir Starmer may have survived the vote, but what played out in Prime Minister's questions didn't look like strength. It looked like a Prime Minister clinging on. Kemi Badenoch didn't need to destroy him. She just had to expose the hesitation, the dodges, the lack of control, and that's exactly what unfolded. This wasn't a collapse. It was something more dangerous. A leader who once dominated now, looking reactive, pressured, and just a step behind the moment.